Have you ever gone somewhere so quiet that you could hear the lake breathe? If you love fishing, isolation, and creepy true stories, then stay till the end. This one might make you think twice before ever sitting near a dock again. And hey, if you're new here, hit subscribe and keep your lights low. You won't want to miss what happens next. Ethan Cole was 27. Quiet guy, loved the outdoors, and had been dying for a weekend away from the city. So he rented this old wooden cabin by Lake Huron, way up north. No Wi-Fi, no phone signal, no neighbors. Just him, his fishing rod, a cooler full of beer, and his golden retriever, Milo. When he first arrived, everything felt perfect. The air smelled like pine, the water looked like glass, and the whole world seemed paused. He grilled, cracked open a beer, and threw a few casts into the shimmering water while the sun bled into the horizon. But right when everything felt peaceful, Milo started growling. Low, deep, constant, staring straight toward the dock. First Ethan laughed. Maybe an animal, maybe just waves. But the lake wasn't moving. There was no wind. Then a ripple broke the surface. Slow, deliberate. Something was moving right under the dock. He called Milo back, peered over the edge with his flashlight. Nothing. Just dark, endless water. Later that night, he sat by the campfire, flames crackling softly. The woods were silent, too silent. Then came it thunk, thunk, thunk. It was coming from the dock, like something heavy, slamming the planks from underneath. Ethan froze. Probably just the current, he whispered to himself. But deep down, he knew. The lake didn't have a current strong enough to shake wood that hard. He walked to the dock, flashlight trembling slightly. The sound stopped the moment he got close. He shined the light around. Nothing. No ripples. No animal. Just still water. The next morning, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. The rope that tied his boat to the dock had been shredded. Not cut, chewed through. That evening, he decided to try fishing again. This time a little farther from the dock. Milo refused to come out. He stayed inside, whining at the cabin door. Ethan laughed nervously. Guess it's just you and me, Lake. He cast his line. Within seconds, something yanked it down hard. The rod nearly snapped in half. Ethan's heart pounded. Got a big one, he yelled, half laughing, half panicking. But whatever it wasn't a fish. The pull was too smooth, too calculated. Then suddenly it let go. The line went slack. When Ethan reeled it back in, his bait was gone, replaced with strands of something dark and slimy. Stuck to his fingers like oil, smelled like rot. He wiped it on his jeans and looked down at the water. It was still, completely still. That night, as he sat inside reading, the thumping returned. Louder this time. Thud, thud, thud. Milo barked, pacing in circles. Ethan grabbed the flashlight again. He stepped onto the dock, every board creaking under his boots. The mist was thick now, hanging over the water like smoke. He aimed the beam downward. For a moment he saw only fog. Then something moved. A hand, pale, bloated, gripped the edge of the dock. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The fingers were too long, too white. The skin almost see-through. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. Then, slowly, the hand slid back under the water. No splash, just gone. He sprinted back to the cabin, slamming the door shut, locking everything twice. But he couldn't sleep. The sound, the image of that hand wouldn't leave his mind. At around 3 a.m., curiosity got the better of him. He peeked through the dusty window toward the dock. And there it was. A face just barely visible above the surface. White eyes. Motionless lips. It looked like it was mouthing something. Ethan turned off the light, heart hammering in his ears. By dawn, he was gone. Everything thrown into the boat. Motor sputtering, adrenaline shaking his hands. He didn't care about his deposit or the cooler or the gear he left behind. He just wanted out. But as he pulled away from the dock, he looked back one last time. And he swore. There was something standing there. A dark, dripping figure watching him drift away. And when the fog rolled in behind it, the dock disappeared. If you made it this far, you're brave. But trust me, The next story in this video gets even darker. So don't click away and make sure you're subscribed, because what's waiting beneath the next lake makes this one look almost friendly. If you thought the last story was unsettling, don't look away now, because this next one is about a fisherman who tried to uncover what really happened to his uncle, and what he found at the bottom of that lake still haunts him. Before we start, if you're enjoying these stories, go ahead and subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming after this one. Ryan Mendez was 33. He worked long hours in the city, the kind of job that drains you until you forget what silence sounds like. So when summer came around, he decided to take a break, to visit his late uncle's old cabin at Lake Talbot, in rural Maine. The place had been abandoned for almost a year. His uncle, a lifelong fisherman, had died there. Locals said he'd suffered a seizure and drowned while fishing alone. But Ryan didn't buy that. His uncle was strong, experienced, and cautious. Something about the story just didn't sit right. The road to the lake was overgrown, half swallowed by trees. By the time he reached the cabin, evening fog had already rolled across the water like a thick white blanket. Inside, everything was frozen in time. His uncle's boots by the door, fishing rods lined up by the window, even a cup still sitting on the table, covered in dust. Ryan took a deep breath. "Feels like you never left, old man," he muttered, forcing a smile. That night, he sat by the fire, flipping through old photos and gear, when he found something wedged between two books, a small, leather-bound fishing journal. The pages were filled with notes about bait, water temperature, weather, typical stuff. But near the end, the writing changed, shaky, uneven. The last entry read, "Something keeps surfacing near the deep side. Too human. Too quiet." Ryan frowned. Too human? On the next page, his uncle had drawn coordinates, a small X on the northern edge of the lake, where the water dropped into a deep trench. Ryan stared at it for a long time. He wasn't sure what scared him more, that his uncle wrote it, or that the ink looked smeared, like the page had been wet. The next morning, curiosity got the better of him. He took his uncle's old boat, dusted off the oars, and rowed toward that marked spot. The lake was different, still, silent, not a single bird in the trees. Even the air felt heavy, like it didn't want to move. He cast his line, watching the ripples spread outward, disappearing into the fog. Minutes turned into hours. Not a single bite. Then movement. Out on the water, maybe 50 yards away, he saw another small boat. There was a man sitting inside, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and old fishing clothes, his head tilted down. Ryan felt a weird comfort. Maybe one of the locals was still around. He waved and shouted, "Hey there! You out fishing too?" No response. The man didn't even look up, just sat still, motionless. Ryan frowned. "All right, creepy." He tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. So he started rowing toward him. But as the fog shifted, his stomach dropped. The other boat was empty. No man. No hat. Just an old, half-sunken rowboat drifting quietly, the water lapping against its side. He stared for a long moment, until something bumped against his own boat. A ripple. Then silence again. That night, back in the cabin, he couldn't shake the image from his head. The fog, the empty boat, the stillness. He replayed the day's events over and over until finally, he told himself he'd go back, but this time he'd bring proof. The next evening, he returned, mounting a GoPro to the front of the boat. He rowed out as the sun dipped below the trees, painting the water a deep, bruised orange. The air was colder that night, the kind of cold that makes your breath visible. He reached the same spot, turned off the motor, and let the boat drift. For a while, nothing happened. Just soft waves brushing the hull. Then scraping, like nails or metal dragging beneath the boat. Ryan froze. It circled him, slow, deliberate. He leaned over the side with his flashlight, hand trembling slightly. The beam sliced through the dark water, and that's when he saw it. A face. His uncle's face. staring back at him from beneath the surface. Ryan gasped, falling backward, the flashlight clattering to the floor. For a second, he just sat there, paralyzed, heart hammering. He forced himself to look again, but the water was calm, empty, like nothing had been there at all. He started the motor, rowing frantically toward shore. But when he reached the dock, his breath caught in his throat. Sitting on the wooden planks was his uncle's old fishing hat. Wet, moldy, reeking of lake rot. Back inside, he poured himself a drink with shaking hands and checked the GoPro footage. Most of it was still quiet. Then, halfway through the recording, he saw it. Just below the waterline, his uncle's reflection again. Eyes open, mouth moving. Ryan leaned closer, trying to make out the words. He turned the volume all the way up. Static crackled through the speakers. And faintly, almost too quiet to hear, came a whisper. "Don't fish here." The screen glitched, cutting to black. Ryan's breath caught in his chest. He replayed it 3 times. Each time that same whisper, soft, pleading, angry. He didn't sleep that night. By morning, he packed his things and left the cabin for good. When a ranger went to check the property a week later, the boat was found tied to the dock, but the GoPro was gone. If you're still here, thank you. You've got nerves of steel. And trust me, you'll need them for the final story, because that one might just keep you from ever camping near water again. So don't scroll, don't click away. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe, because you won't believe what happened to the next group of campers. If you've made it this far, you're braver than most, because this last story, it's not just eerie. It's the kind that makes you second-guess every splash you'll ever hear by a lake again. And hey, if you're enjoying this, hit subscribe, because these true horror stories only get darker from here. Now, let's get into it. Arrival. Tyler and Mia were 25, young, adventurous, and obsessed with backpacking across Oregon. They'd been camping for weeks, hopping from one hidden trail to another, living off granola bars, instant coffee, and adrenaline. One afternoon, while scrolling through old forest maps on Mia's phone, she found something unusual, a campground that didn't appear on modern maps. Clearwater Lake, she read aloud. Closed since 1997. Perfect, Tyler laughed. More privacy. They reached it just before sunset, a forgotten patch of forest at the edge of a glassy, silent lake. The sign at the entrance was so faded it barely read, Clearwater Family Campground. The picnic tables were rotting, the fire pits filled with moss. But to them, it was paradise. They set up their tent near the waterline, lit a small fire, and toasted marshmallows under a sky thick with stars. Ghost campers, Mia teased, looking across the black lake. You think they ever really left? Tyler smirked. If they did, I hope they're bringing snacks. They laughed, unaware that something, or someone, was listening from the opposite shore. 3,300 to 3,700 words, haunting at the shoreline. Around midnight, the forest had gone still. No wind, no crickets, just the faint lap of water against the shore. Mia was half asleep when she heard it. Laughter, soft, distant, echoing across the lake. She sat up. Tyler, did you hear that? He rubbed his eyes. Probably just other campers. But when he looked outside, the lake was empty. No lanterns, no boats, just fog drifting low over the surface. Then came splashing, slow, rhythmic, like footsteps wading through shallow water. Tyler grabbed his flashlight and stepped out, scanning the shoreline. That's when he froze. 3 silhouettes stood knee-deep in the water, facing away, perfectly still. Mia, he whispered. Someone's out there. He called out, Hey, you guys okay? No answer. No movement. He lifted the flashlight, the beam cut across the lake, and the figures vanished. Just ripples spreading out, fading into silence. They ran back to the tent, zipped it shut, hearts pounding. Minutes passed. Then drip, drip, drip. Water began falling from the ceiling of the tent. At first, they thought it was rain, but when Tyler checked, The sky was clear. Then came the footsteps. Wet, heavy, circling the tent. Squelch. Step. Squelch. The sound moved slow, like someone dragging their feet through mud. Mia grabbed Tyler's arm. Please, don't open it. But Tyler had to know. He unzipped the flap just an inch, just enough to see. And what he saw didn't make sense. Wet footprints, leading away from the tent, down toward the lake. He followed them with his flashlight, until the beam landed on 3 old, half-sunken fishing chairs, facing the water. The chairs rocked slightly, as if someone had just stood up from them. 3,700 to 4,000 words. Final moments. That was it for Mia. She wanted to leave now. They started throwing things into their backpacks when a voice came from behind them. Soft, calm, almost playful. We never left. They froze. Slowly they turned. 3 figures stood at the tree line, dripping, gray-skinned, eyes hollow like empty shells. Their clothes clung to their bodies, soaked through. Water poured steadily from their open mouths, like they were breathing the lake itself. Mia screamed. Tyler grabbed her hand, and they ran. Branches whipped their faces as they tore through the woods, hearts hammering. Behind them, they could hear splashing, not footsteps now, but something chasing. They didn't stop until they reached the main road, a cracked highway cutting through the forest. When they finally turned around, the forest was silent again. No figures, no laughter, just the endless fog rolling over the trees. They didn't go back for their gear, didn't report it. They just left, and never spoke of it again. A week later, a park ranger doing a safety sweep found their abandoned campsite. The tent was still there, zipped shut. Inside were 2 sleeping bags, still damp. But the ranger's report mentioned one detail that no one could explain. At the edge of the lake, 3 fishing rods stood upright in the sand. All 3 lines cast into the water, and still tugging. If you made it to the end, you've earned it. But tell me, would you camp by a lake after hearing these stories? Drop your answer in the comments and make sure you subscribe, because next week's stories will take us somewhere even darker. Somewhere you can't scream for help.